Hi, so today we're going to talk about behind the neck shoulder press with the barbell and why it might not be the greatest exercise for your neck or for your shoulders or for your shoulder joint. All right, so and you find people doing these a lot where they put the weight, the bar, and then lower it behind their neck and then press it up. Right, so elbows flared out, the bar goes behind the neck and then up. All right. So now let's first start with one of the problems with this exercise. All right. Uh, the problem with this exercise is your elbows are flared out, right? So you're in this position. You're flared out. Now, when you move like this, what's going to happen is you have a bone on the side, which is called the acromion, right? And you have a tendon underneath, which is called your supraspinatus, which goes underneath the acromion. Now, when you flare it out like this, it basically compresses against that, like squishes against that. So you get what's called impingement. It gets irritated. You're going to irritate the um, supraspinatus tendon, right? That's why you call that impingement syndrome, right? And over time, it can get irritated, and you get like people who can kind of tear it because it's been frayed. It gets irritated over a period of time because guess what? It keeps rubbing against the roof of the acromion and keeps getting uh, you know irritated because it gets compressed and squished and rubs around the acromion. So it does get irritated with your elbows flared out, not to the front, but right to the side. Here, let me, okay, right to the side here. When you're doing it like this, it goes, behind your neck, and then up. So what's going to happen is right under the acromion, there's your supraspinatus tendon, which can get irritated. All right, and having the behind the neck shoulder press with the barbell irritates that. Now, aside from that, your neck goes forward. You get what's called an anterior head carriage, right? You're sticking your neck forward, right? Let me turn to the side. So, you're doing that. Your neck has to go somewhere. Your head has to get out of the way. So your head kind of goes forward, and then you press it up, right? Head goes forward, press it up. Now, what happens is with the anterior head carriage, over a period of time, you put strain on the muscles of the neck, but what you also do is you put pressure on the vertebrae, right? And the discs in between the vertebrae in the neck can start bulging out to the back, all right? And because your neck is going more towards the front like this, when you get that anterior head carriage, it puts more pressure on the discs and they start bulging out to the back. Now, as they bulge out to the back, they start compressing on nerves, some of them supplying your arms, so not necessarily a great situation. Okay, so this is like the two most common issues, right? Like sticking, because you have to stick your neck somewhere out of the way, so otherwise you're gonna whack yourself in the head. So with behind the neck shoulder press, you do with the barbell, you do put you strain on the neck, and you can get like little bulges uh, in the discs in between your vertebrae, right? And at the same time, shoulder joint, you kind of irritate what's your supraspinatus because it's kind of going to rub or squish against the acromion, right? So you get the impingement problem. Now you have your traditional military press, right, where you're a little bit closer in, right, with your elbows a little bit pulled in, right, and that kind of takes the two things, and because it's done to the front, so your head doesn't have to kind of go forward, so that's less stress on your neck, and at the same time, what happens is the supraspinatus comes out from under that squishing pattern under the acromion, so it puts less stress on that rotator cuff. Supraspinatus tendon gets less irritated, right? And by the way, supraspinatus is one of the muscles of the rotator cuff. It's supraspinatus along with subscapularis, infraspinatus, teres minor, right? Those are your for rotator cuff muscles. So the supraspinatus, does get irritated, and it takes the longest to heal, just the way it's positioned and a bunch of other factors, but it does get irritated. Now, having said that, right, here I'm kind of telling you, well, the behind the neck press is bad, yada yada yada, and yeah, it's not that great. So why do people keep doing it? And you'll find a lot of bodybuilders, athletes, and so on and so forth, especially bodybuilders, they keep doing the behind the neck press. So what's so great about it, right? Like, why do they do it? Well, if you do it, behind the neck press versus, like, say, a conventional overhead press, right, with a barbell, right? Both exercises with barbell. What you will find is the behind the neck press, because you're flaring your elbows out a little bit more, it might put a little bit more emphasis on that medial delts, right? The middle part of the shoulder, right? Because the shoulder has three heads, right? The front, the middle, and the back. So the medial head kind of gives you that wide shoulder appearance. So yeah, the behind the neck shoulder press might give you a little bit more emphasis on the middle head, right? But is it worth it? In the long run, probably not. And I mean, if you're doing overhead press, like your traditional from the front, then as you use heavier and heavier weight, you probably develop enough strength to lift more and more weight, and eventually you will probably put that much stress on the medial head of the deltoid or the shoulder, just as much as you would with, say, lesser weight behind the neck, with the behind the neck shoulder press, right? Now, keeping those things in mind, you can, for instance, do the overhead press, and if you want to emphasize your medial delts, like your middle delts, do side laterals, right? Or if you want, do side laterals first, pre-exhaust your medial delts, and then do the front overhead press, right? Usually it's just called overhead press, or they used to call it press, right? But again, or push press, for instance, where you use your little leg drive a little bit more. But keeping that in mind, if you do the behind the neck press, and yeah, maybe you'll be okay for a little bit, but if after like a while you start developing shoulder problems and you can't lift, then how great is that for your shoulders? And if you have an exercise like, say, the regular overhead press from the front, an exercise like that, you can keep doing it for a while, then eventually that exercise is going to be more beneficial because you're going to have more staying power, right? Again, when you exercise, you want to be able to do something you can do for a long time, because that's where you kind of see the improvement over a period of time, not something you can do for a very short time and boom, it's kind of irritated your shoulder, and then you have to take time off and blah 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 blah, then get rehab, spend money on that, gets expensive. You're better off doing the front overhead press, or just the overhead press, the traditional overhead press, which is from the front, and staying away if possible, or minimizing behind the neck shoulder press if you can. I mean, if you want to try to see what it feels like for yourself, I mean, you can try it, with lighter weight and see what it feels like. Do I suggest you do it all the time? No, of course not. Will it make a big difference if you do it with lightweight once in a while just to see what it feels like? Probably not that. It won't irritate it that much. But you still have to be careful. You can tear something. And again, keep in mind when you flare your elbows out, you do not want to go very low, because you put a lot of stress on the shoulder joint, and you can end up tearing stuff. Like, you can put a lot of stress on your labrum, and like issues. Basically, you can put a little bit more stress on the joint itself rather than the muscles. So even if you do behind the neck, try not to kind of go very low, right? Like, again, get used to doing it without any weight. Like, take a broomstick and see what it feels like, right? And how far you can go with a broomstick, and then try to do it. But again, if you're in it for the long haul, I would say just do the overhead press. add side laterals and bent over side laterals to hit the posterior delts a little bit more if you want, if they're lagging, and that should, be pretty adequate for you. All right, take care. I'll talk to you later. See you next time.